Massachusetts Peace Action is a statewide, citizen-based organization working to foster a more just and peaceful world. Through organizing, advocacy, and education, we promote human rights, global cooperation, an end to war, and budget priorities that focus national security spending on the true threats of the 21st century. Our organization has endorsed Senator Markey for re-election. We recognize and we appreciate his long and valued work in Congress, especially his role as a transformational leader. That's exactly what we need in this time of crisis. The decisions that we as a nation make today, tomorrow, and in the coming weeks can not only get us through the COVID-19 crisis, they could transform our country for the better. This crisis has revealed weaknesses that have been brewing for decades. They include gross inequities across our society, a failure to acknowledge the challenges of the 21st century, and a waste of resources on futile wars. Senator Markey understands these issues. That's exemplified by his sponsorship of the Green New Deal. We appreciate Senator Markey's willingness to speak to us at this critical time. Thank you.
Hello, Massachusetts Peace Action. I hope that you're all safe. I hope you're all distancing yourselves so that we can protect not just your families, but everyone else's families. It's absolutely imperative in this time that we execute the single most perfect public health, public safety strategy to reduce the number of people who get sick, to reduce the number of people who pass away. So thank you all. Thank you for being the activists which you are. Thank you for being the voice for peace. Thank you for being the voice for all of those who need more in our society. You are the people who are always there, always fighting for the right things, to standing up against those who would undermine justice in our society. And it means the world to me, but to everyone, that you are those people, those advocates for true justice within our society. So I know that there are a number of questions that you want me to answer, and I'd be more than willing to do so. So the first question is, what is the People's Bailout Campaign, and how does it relate to the present stimulus bill and future stimulus packages? Well, the goal is to make sure that people and families are the beneficiaries of these trillions of dollars which we are going to be spending from the federal level. And we have to make sure that it's the workers inside of the small businesses who will be receiving hundreds of billions of dollars who get protected. We have to make sure that these unemployment checks do get to every worker, so that they have 4 months of pretty much full pay in order to protect them and their families during this hard time. We have to make sure that it's the gig workers, that it's the self-contractors, that it's the waiters and waitresses who also are able to receive something, which is a part of a people's approach to a bailout of our economy, to keep it afloat, so that when this public health crisis passes, that they will be able to go back to their regular jobs, that they will be there, that our economy will have been protected. We just have to make sure that we do this with fairness and with justice for everyone. We know that the largest corporations are definitely going to have the most powerful lobbyists and the President of the United States, Donald Trump, standing up and fighting for them. But we have to make sure that it is the ordinary families across our country who get protected, that the poorest in our society, that they get protected as well. That's our job. That's what Massachusetts Peace Action does. It stands up for those who need help the most. The next question is, what are the unmet needs of health professionals and other essential workers? How can those needs be met? the healthcare workers in our country are real heroes. They're putting themselves in harm's way all day, every single day. They know that they're dealing with coronavirus. They know that they can get sick, and they know that it can be transmitted from them to their own families. So we have a responsibility to them to make sure that they get the protective gear which they need, that they're able to protect themselves so that they can protect all of our families and that they can protect their own families. That's why it's been an absolute disgrace that Donald Trump has not yet fully invoked the Defense Production Act. I called on him to do this, a month ago, to stand up and to tell our corporations that you must stop doing what you're doing and stop manufacturing the protective gear, the clothing, the ventilators, the N95 masks, which we need in order to fight this disease. He still hasn't fully invoked the Defense Production Act. It is an absolute abdication of responsibility for him not to be the commander-in-chief, not to be the person standing up for everyone in our country, but especially the healthcare workers and the other people who are on the front lines. Let's be honest, policemen, firemen, emergency medical technicians, the people in grocery stores who are standing there and continuing to work, the people who are on mass transit working still to make sure those systems work all across our country. People are doing what they need to do in order to protect all the rest of our families. We need Donald Trump to make sure that he does what he's supposed to do, to give all of these people the tools they need. And it has been just absolutely appalling to think that he doesn't see himself in that role of being the person who coordinates the whole country. And to listen to his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, talk about how all of that protective gear, which they have in the federal government, is our equipment, talking about the president and the White House rather than the people's protective gear, is an absolute insight into how they see our government and how they see the role of the presidency. And it is just something that has to end this year. He's just got a few more months to go, and we have to mobilize to make sure that he does not get reelected. This is just an historic catastrophe that was largely avoidable if we had real leadership. The next question that we have here is, let me just scroll down here. It is, how would the Green New Deal support post-crisis recovery and strengthen our longer-term resilience? How can concerned citizens promote the Green New Deal? Well, we don't have any doubt in our minds that the science is correct, that the planet is dangerously warming, that it poses a threat to just about every single part of our planet, and that we need to have a massive response, creating millions of jobs in deploying the renewable energy technologies that will help to reduce the likelihood that we will see the same kind of catastrophic consequences as a result of climate change that we are now seeing as a result of the ignoring of the science with regard to pandemics. And we also have to make sure that as we create these millions of new jobs, that we do so with intersectionality. We do so paying attention to the frontline communities, minority communities, which are always harmed when we deal with the whole subject of pollution in our society. Black and brown people have always breathed different air than white people. That's just the way our society has always worked. We have to make sure that we implement a Green New Deal, that we do so with justice, that we do so ensuring that the jobs which are created are in minority communities, that they're at the front of the line of getting these jobs, and that we do this in a way that ensures that we reduce the amount of racial discrimination which exists within our society. That's why the Green New Deal is so powerful. And it's why Donald Trump, right from the day that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and I introduced it, has fought hard to make sure that it never gets implemented. But I will tell you something, next January 20th, when the new president is sworn in, the Green New Deal is going to be right at the top of the agenda. And that's why we have to keep our energy levels high, because our day is coming in. In fact, Trump ignoring science on coronavirus is actually going to help us, because he's ignoring the science of climate change as well. And I think his ability to be able to con people into thinking that climate change is a hoax is absolutely being undermined by this coronavirus, which the president tried hard to convince people wasn't really going to be harmful to the American people. So the next question is, Iran's response to COVID-19 is undermined by US sanctions. Should those sanctions be suspended? Well, the United States has a responsibility to be the moral leader of our planet. And that's why Senator Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and I last week wrote a letter demanding that Trump administration make practical changes to the sanctions regime, which he has imposed upon this country. We have to make sure that they can receive the medical tools which they need to fight the coronavirus. Iran is being hit extremely hard, and many innocent people are going to die if they don't get access to the medical technologies, to the medical services which they need. And moreover, if they don't receive it, then it's going to spread into other countries. And ultimately, it will come back to haunt the United States and the rest of the civilized world. So we really don't have a choice. We have to make sure that we put the tools which Iran needs to fight coronavirus into their hands. They were in denial, largely. They weren't responding correctly. But that doesn't mean that we should contribute to the kind of suffering which is going to be endured by the people of that country. We have a responsibility to look at that sanctions regime and to make all the practical changes which we have to make in order to guarantee that the tools are there for Iran to fight this disease. It is a moral responsibility of the United States to step in to help to accomplish that goal. And the next question is that the United States government has supported work on global health security for more than 2 decades. Should that work be expanded so that we can prevent or curb future pandemics? Well, in the last week, I was joined by several of my colleagues writing a letter to President Trump, calling on him to introduce a United Nations Security Council resolution that declares pandemics a clear threat to international security. My wife was a career 2-star admiral in the public health service. She joined right out of medical school, and she rose to become Assistant Surgeon General of the United States and the first ever Deputy Assistant Secretary for Women's Health. So that's what my wife has done with her whole career, trying to put in place the public health prevention programs that protect not only the United States, but the rest of the world, because each one of these diseases is just a plane ride away from coming to our country from any place in the world, which is why we have to work through the United Nations. We have to work through WHO. We have to have a global view of disease. Otherwise, we are going to have catastrophe after catastrophe, which winds up ultimately on our own doorstep. So that's the only way to think. And that's why the other senators and I sent that letter to Trump last week, so that he would know that there are people in our country who are going to be demanding that we play a much, much greater role in leading the world in the response to potential pandemic disease. It's the only way we can think about these issues. And by the way, climate change is part of this as well, because the warmer the planet gets, then we're going to see more and more insects, more and more changes that take place, causing the transferal of disease into parts of the world that it had never occurred before. That's just the reality of climate change. We know that to be true. So from my perspective, this is a critical moment in our nation's history. We now have to step up and be the leader. Donald Trump is not that leader, but the rest of us, and that's what mass peace action is all about. We have to be the leaders on this issue. We have to stand up. We have to fight. So thank you all so much for all of your leadership. Thank you for everything you do for our state and for our country and for our planet. Thank you for helping to lift our gaze to the constellation of possibilities for our families, for our state, for our country, and for our world. That's what you're all about. And over the next several weeks, over the next few months, just be safe. Take care of your families, take care of each other. We have to stay apart, but by staying apart, we come together. And I think it's absolutely critical that we be the leaders. So thank you for your leadership, and thank you for everything you do to make sure that America is a more peaceful, more prosperous, more healthy, and more just society every single day that Mass Peace Action is leading the charge. Thank you.